The night was deep. A light chill and silence spread over the streets of Antwerp, Belgium. The raindrops had just stopped, but the air still carried the scent of moisture and mystery. This part of the city, the Diamond District, was considered one of the most secure places in the world. Behind every wall, every alley, every building here were locked diamonds worth millions of dollars. Armed guards at every step, cameras on every corner, and layers of sensors behind every door. This was a place where trust was the most expensive currency. They say 80% of the world's diamonds pass through this district. But that night, the same district was about to undergo its greatest test. A vault lay 100 feet below the ground, the heart of the Antwerp Diamond Center. Thick steel doors, 6 different locks, magnetic sensors, motion detectors, and infrared beams. All of this had been installed to protect that treasure which is humanity's oldest desire, the symbol of brilliance. They say breaking that vault was impossible, but there was someone who treated the impossible simply as a challenge. The city clocks signaled 12 o'clock. The streets were deserted. Guards were dozing in their cabins. The lights on the upper floors were out. But deep beneath the earth some stirring had begun. An elevator was slowly descending. 2 men stood inside it, black coats, gloves on their hands, calm gazes, neither haste nor fear, as if they had come here not for a crime but for a mission. The lift stops. A door opens ahead, a long corridor, white walls, security cameras all around, and an odd silence in the air. Beyond the wall, in that vault, the world's most precious treasure was sleeping. Bent near the door, one of the men looks at something. He smiles. He opens a small briefcase. Inside, wires, tools, and an old metallic card. Gently he places that card on the sensor. The red light flickers, then it turns green. The other man holds his breath, but the first man's face still shows that same strange calm. The first lock opens, then the second, then the third. With every click the air grows heavier. Finally, that massive steel door which had not been opened for years slowly begins to slide from its place. A cold breath comes out from within, and then a brilliance of diamonds that could drive a person mad. Sparkling stones everywhere, gold bars, rare gems like a river of light. The 2 men stand there for a moment. They look at each other. This was not just a theft, it was about to become history. And at that moment Antwerp's ground heard that sound. The sound of the vault door opening, a door that should never have opened. Antwerp is a city where the streets do not show sparkle, but behind every wall billions of dollars of light are imprisoned. The world calls it the City of Diamonds, because 8 out of every 10 diamonds mined pass through Antwerp's lanes at some point. For the people here, diamonds are not merely gems but life. For them that shine is the mark of generations of toil, trust, and history. Every shop, every dealer, every clerk is a link in this trade, where trust is the greatest security system. But hidden within the walls of that trust was a vault, whose story was soon to turn into the world's most talked about theft. The vault lay 4 floors deep beneath the Antwerp Diamond Center. The walls were so thick that even drills had no effect. The sensors were so sensitive that even the breeze would trigger the alarm. Magnetic locks, thermal detectors, steel doors, and 24-hour surveillance. Every layer was considered impenetrable. This was where diamond packets worth billions, rare gems, and gold bars were kept. Every dealer had their small locker. But the real power lay in the key to that vault, which was not with one person but with 5 different people. It was a fortress that no one had ever broken. But in the crowd of this city, there was a man walking who thought the fortresses could be broken. You only have to strike at the right place. His name was Leonardo Notarbartolo, an Italian man in a neat suit, a light stubble, and a smile that erased any suspicion. For the people of Antwerp he was a new diamond trader who had come from Italy to expand business. But in reality he was a thief the world would later call the mastermind. Leonardo was not an ordinary criminal. He neither used violence nor hurried. He considered crime an art. His method was clear. First understand the world, then melt into it so no one can recognize you. After arriving in Antwerp he first rented a small office space in the Diamond Center. He went there every day, made small deals, talked to people, drank tea, smiled. Gradually he became a trusted trader in everyone's eye. His speech was dignified, his tone polite and his gait, as if he was not in a hurry for anything. For months, he simply watched who the guard was, when he came, which camera moved at what angle, which door opened first and at what time the vault's path was empty. He noted everything like a painter. Understanding his canvas, the Antwerp dealers began to like him. He was invited to parties. People were impressed by his charm, but somewhere inside Leonardo was constructing the other picture of his world, a picture that had both glitter and darkness. One day, sitting alone in his room, he wrote in his diary, "Every system has a crack. You only need patience to see it." Patience was his greatest weapon. For 6 months he lived as a shadow of that vault. Every day a new observation, every night a new plan. And when everyone counted him among Antwerp's successful businessmen, he knew the time to start the game had come. It is said his face was honest but his dreams were not. And that was the dream that would make Antwerp's most secure place, the greatest mystery in history. Leonardo was not alone. He realized from the very first evening that big dreams are not fulfilled alone. He sought those faces who would not tremble at the sight of system weaknesses, if given the chance. He increased meetings under the pretext of meeting people. Who liked which technology? What were the old complaints? Who was watching whom? The first partner he recruited was a man with a calm, slow voice, an electronics expert whose eyes would light up when he spoke of circuits and systems. He had more work than words. His habit was to disassemble things into parts, and then reassemble them into a new picture. The second role was played by a locksmith, who regarded doors and locks like puzzles. His fingers were slow but experience spoke. The third member appeared as an ordinary driver and logistics handler. He had an understanding of alarms and security protocol. And the fourth was that calm-faced man who knew how to disappear in the crowd. His strength was the art of changing language and behavior. It was a small group of 4 faces, but they knew that for any real job not only technology was needed, but also mental discipline. Leonardo did not reveal his plan openly. He only gave hints. He shared one challenge at a time and watched who could stay silent the longest. When trust was built, the real layers of the plan opened. Leonardo decided that they would use methods that would make it difficult for the police to catch them. That meant clever steps that stayed outside the law's gaze. They watched the bank's every move for about a year. They observed not just daily but for weeks. When was the office quiet? On which days security was busy in some other building? Which alley's light dimmed at what time? These were all small observations that Leonardo was stitching into a larger plan. Another essential task was rehearsal. They built a replica of the vault in an old warehouse outside the city. That place was not like a movie set, but a room where the team learned the rhythm of every step, how to walk, when to stop, when to hold the breath. They practiced for hours, sometimes the entire night, repeating every action and every signal until everything felt perfectly natural. That warehouse became their mute music, where each member, through practice, became more skilled in silence. Their practice was not only about machines or technique, it rested on those moments when the second hand of the clock moved a few seconds, and the whole team's heartbeat could be heard together. Leonardo always said, "We are not breaking locks, we are understanding them." He meant they were not trying to break security, but to read its language. That language was not of iron, it was the language of time, habit and silence. Among the crew, unspoken deals were also made. Some were paid more, some less. Some were left out, some positions were secured. Leonardo had read every man's mind and temperament. This study was of not only their technical ability but also their fears, desires and limits. When crisis came, those were the things that surfaced which had been hidden in rehearsals. They chose the stages of the plan very carefully. They kept alternate routes at every step. If one path closed, another had to open. If one cue was missed, a prepared response already existed. This contingency backup was their greatest asset. But the story does not dwell on those backups. It deals with human decisions, moments of doubt and the fragile edges of trust. Leonardo's greatest strength was his morale. He always smiled, thinking that this was not merely a theft, but an opportunity to challenge the system. There was an aesthetic view in his words, as if an artist were planning his greatest work.
For him, diamonds were not just wealth, they were a test of his intelligence. Yet amid that test, his sleep was broken. Many nights he sat alone thinking, would anyone's life be put at risk? Would his plans ruin someone's life? But a harsher part of his thinking shouted, we must do this because no one thought the impossible could be possible. Several small disagreements arose between him and the team. Should they wait longer? Should they take another look? Has the routine changed now and the opportunity emerged? Leonardo asked 100 times, are you completely ready? And when all showed solid desire in their eyes and trembling hope in their hands, he finally set the night. The choice of that night was not random. It was not a sudden decision. It was the result of months of patience and observation. They knew that time was everything. One wrong second and the whole game would end. Therefore they chose the night when the city was most quiet and every street, every shadow became part of their plan.
In the final rehearsal, they practiced not only their moves, they also learned to read one another's heartbeats, breaths, and fears. Who panics when? Whose voice trembles at which moment? And at what instant someone's attention might slip? They had already learned all of this. Night had fallen. The cold Saturday night of 15 February 2003. The city's alleys were at peace. Shop lights had gone out, and the sort of solitude in the air that is often called the weekend's hush had settled. The days when Antwerp's streets were empty were precisely the most helpful for Leonardo and his team. They knew that when the city slowed its breath, the most dangerous decisions could be made without fear. Time was exact. They gathered one by one, without any celebration, without any commotion, watches on their wrists, resolve in their eyes. No one spoke. Their small eye and mouth gestures were their signals. Once everyone nodded, it was as if an unspoken agreement had been signed. No one said exactly how fast their hearts were beating, but their gait and the rhythm of their breaths conveyed every feeling. Outside the building on the reception floor, there was a faint silence. No name on the register. Guards, sleeping quietly at the table. The private access cards that were the fruit of months of preparation were used one by one. A card was swiped, the door opened, and they entered as if returning not from a theft but like an old acquaintance. The lift descended slowly. Its sound felt like part of some symbolic music. Minimal movement, with a tick-tick. As the doors opened, a wall-like coolness and chill welcomed them. The room below was of a different kind. White walls, muted lighting, and many things that made their presence known. Their footwear was soft so that the sound of footsteps remained muffled. Every step seemed to join a rhythm, slow but unbroken. Leonardo's voice was low, but he held the rein. He acknowledged every small sign and moved his hand accordingly. There was steadiness on his face, no less than that of a chess player about to play his final move. But behind his eyes was a glimpse, a confluence of worry and hope. He knew that a misuse of any minute could demolish the whole plan. They reached the place of the cameras, the eyes that watched day and night. For a few moments only, silence and deep breaths filled everything. The team members who had rehearsed for months now began to perform their parts. The tools in their hands were exceedingly quiet, personal and rehearsed. They used the things they had repeatedly tried during practice. In front of the cameras and sensors they were acting. But that action was not as simple to describe in words. It was a kind of silent dialogue that only those who had lived it in rehearsal could understand. There was a tactile sensation in the air. Sweat on someone's face, a taut crack on a finger, small noises that the human ear normally ignores. Yet there was a strange rhythm in them. The stiffness of a paper, a faint cinnamon-like scent, a breath kissed by wrist. They adopted their own method around every sensor. Some things were kept steady. Some were modified. Some they simply ignored by giving them attention. This work was not a violent action. It was all being done with intelligence and precise timing. The lock specialist was quietly absorbed in his part. His fingers worked like those of an experienced musician, not hurried but assured and diligent. At every small movement, the team held their breath in unison. Every click and every faint sound created a kind of resonance within them. It felt as if they were listening to their own heartbeats. Sometimes a single click signaled victory for them. Sometimes the same click knocked with fear. Their rehearsals had taught them when to stop, when to slow down, and when to treat a small sound as normal and move on. They did exactly that. Slowly but steadfastly they advanced. Even the corridor's dust could not reveal their presence because they walked as if the direction of the air were not changing at all. The clock's hands progressed to an unseen rhythm. They knew they had little time. At any moment an ordinary activity in the outside world could breach their silence. They had already gone far before the first morning moments, so their work had to be precise. Their moves matched. A small moment came when everything seemed to pause. They reached the threshold of the vault area and checked their equipment one last time. Each looked into his companion's eyes. There was neither hatred nor joy, only an unshakable resolve that was beyond words. No one spoke of returning, nor did anyone express the wish to turn back. They stood there for a moment, amid the outside world's security. This was their final celebration, a moment to witness everything being decided in a calm, dense darkness. Then someone slowly nodded. The signal received. Everyone steadied their breath, and as the cold air touched their cheeks they moved forward. Now there was no turning back. As they crossed the vault's threshold a cold wave descended upon them, the kind of chill that comes from the union of iron and cement. The air there had a distinct scent, the hardness of metal, the smell of age, and the unmistakable presence of things whose value is beyond words. In the lamp's dim light everything looked bluish, as if an old sea were showing a part of its depths. The lock specialist bent over the vault, his face completely calm, eyes immersed in icy concentration. His fingers turned slowly as if engaging in a dialogue with metal. Years of practice that had once been mere repetition were now speaking from his palms. The team watched, breath held. Every movement was exactly as rehearsals had taught. Every step a rule, every breath its time. No haste, no panic, just a precise rhythm. And with every faint click it seemed the fabric of their world was being rewoven. The heavy vault door trembled first with a very faint sound, then it slowly opened. The scrape of metal and the sound of air coming in felt like some old door coming back to life. At the first glimpse the atmosphere froze. The shine of bundles, velvet pouches, the soft rustle of pages. Everyone held time for a few moments. That moment showed both greed and reverence together. Pride on some faces, inner hesitation in others. Someone quietly folded their hands. Someone's eyes stopped in awe. Then gradually the work returned to its pace. Neat, planned, without hurry. They opened lockers one by one, like an old account registered in the mind. 1, 2, 3. Each locker opened in the same manner, in the same rhythm. Gloves changed, pouches lifted, and items placed neatly into different bags in an orderly sequence. With each item placed the tenderness increased, as if a collector were handling a precious object. The diamonds were of different kinds, some with a sharp brilliance, some pale, some with a very regal feel. They handled the stones, feeling their cold and delicate sheen, a sparkle that awakens people's desires. Gold bars felt solid and trustworthy. The rustle of papers conveyed an immediate sense of necessity. Everything was placed carefully. No haste, only quiet and an inner heat rising. Opening each locker was like a small ritual. Checking the gloves, gently lifting the pouches, then placing them in the bag. This was not ritual, but discipline, because they knew even a small mistake could get them caught. The work had a rhythm. Open, inspect, place, label, and as this rhythm proceeded the team's heartbeats fell into the same tempo. Time was their greatest test. Any ordinary stir outside could break their calm. They knew they had only a small window in which to work quickly and disappear. The clock hands moved and a faint sound from afar alerted everyone, as if someone were coming near. They filled the bag, tied the pouches, collected the bundles, and arranged everything in order. Sometimes a gaze would linger on a particular stone. Is this art, wealth, or an unfinished dream? But they suppressed every question and moved on. Their voices were only whispers, just necessary instructions and small signals. CCTV screens flickered for a few moments. Tiny spots, waves like static, and then for an instant, everything blurred. That glimpse was so brief that people outside would not understand. Just a lazy glitch, a last hazy frame in which something was there but not clear. For a few minutes it felt as if fine sand had been sprinkled on the screen. The outside clocks continued to chase them, but the inner walls said nothing. The work was finished. Bags closed, traces erased, tools packed. As the last bag reached its place, they looked at each other's faces. No celebration, just the relieved breath after a long run. They exited just as calmly as they had entered, and the shadows of the black van melted into the street.
The wetness of the rain blurred those traces even more. Helicopter lights shone from above, but they paid no attention. There was no crowd, no obstruction. They crossed the same streets that morning. People would take for everyday life. By the time anyone realized, they had vanished. Only the vault remained open. The rows of empty lockers stood like an audience, as if someone had raised the curtain of a large old theater at night and shown the empty seats inside. There was a strange hush on the pages, a silence that resonated in people's minds for days, weeks, and years to come. Every click, every sound echoed in their chest. And then a silence, a deep, full silence, that stopped in that night's air and in which the world found itself changed when it woke the next day. Monday morning, 17 February 2003. The cold air of Antwerp was still heavy, but the first rays of the sun did not yet know the story that was about to boil beneath the ground. Normal hustle had begun in the corridors of the Diamond Center. The security guard signed his shift file as always. He glanced at the camera feeds. Everything seemed normal. Some traders had come to open their lockers at reception. Some jewel couriers prepared signatures. Everything looked ordinary, until someone saw the vault door. The door that was always closed. Today it was open. The security court's light was on. The alarm was still active, but the scene inside looked like a picture after an earthquake. Rows of lockers were left open. Velvet pouches inside torn, some empty boxes scattered, and a glittering glimpse of diamonds on the floor, as if someone had left them deliberately. A faint scream was heard first, then panic spread from all sides. The vault is open. How can this be? Managers ran inside. Security staff immediately made emergency calls, but as far as one could see, everything was unbelievable. The door was not broken, the locks were completely intact, and the alarm had never sounded. Staff touched the walls as if they wanted to confirm that this was not a dream. Someone began to count the lockers.
12 and 23 lockers were open. Someone looked at the system entry logs. Everything was valid. Someone whispered inside. That means someone from the inside. Within minutes, chaos erupted inside the Diamond Center. People were running on every floor. Alarms buzzing, and outside, lines of cars filled the streets. The first police van arrived, followed by forensic experts in white suits. Cameras, scanners, gloves, evidence bags. Everything was deployed. In front of the vault now stood dozens of officers. There was only silence and disbelief. One officer bent down to pick something up from the floor. A small black piece, maybe part of a tape. This was left here on purpose, he muttered. They knew exactly what they were doing. Outside, rumors had already spread across the Diamond District. Within hours, the news was all over the city. 1 million worth of diamonds stolen. No alarm triggered. Antwerp's streets were now filled with panic. Every jeweler began checking their locker. Someone tried to enter the bank. Others surrounded the security guards, demanding answers from the police. If the alarm didn't go off, then who was inside? Television vans began arriving one after another. Every channel's reporter stood in front of the Diamond Center, with a microphone, cameras on, red lights blinking. We are standing right now in the heart of Antwerp, where the world's biggest heist has taken place. Dozens of millions in diamonds gone overnight. No break-in, no violence, no clue, just gone. Helicopters hovered above the city. Police barriers surrounded the streets below. In the press conference, there was no solid answer. The commissioner's face was tense. We are investigating in every direction, he said. But as of now, there is no lead. Someone in the crowd murmured. They were so smart that we didn't even realize it till morning. By noon, the story had shaken every newsroom in Europe. BBC, CNN, Le Monde, Der Spiegel. Every headline said the same thing. The heist of the century. Belgian newspapers wrote, the most perfect robbery in history, no sound, no violence, no trace. Antwerp's Diamond District, which was always glowing with wealth and lights, now drowned in silence. Armed police stood outside every shop. Fear showed on every trader's face. No one had an answer. Who came, when, and how did they take everything away? Across the street, an old jeweler stood at the door of his showroom. His face carried only one sentence. We've lived with diamonds all our lives, but today for the first time it feels like we know nothing. At the police headquarters, the forensic team began examining every angle. CCTV recordings, motion sensors, fingerprints, fiber traces. But what they found was even more shocking. All CCTV footage was completely corrupt. No usable frame, no shadow, as if someone had blinded the entire surveillance system. Hundreds of questions floated in the air. Was it an inside job? Was an international gang involved? Or was this the work of a mastermind whose kind the world had never seen before? By afternoon, the parliament was asking questions. If a robbery can happen in our most secure building, then nothing in this country is safe. The finance minister said, "This is not just a bank robbery. This is an attack on our system of trust." By evening, the city's rhythm had stopped. The Diamond Center was surrounded by police barricades. Camera flashes burst everywhere. As night fell, the air in Antwerp grew heavy. Tension floated over the street. Every phone carried the same topic. Did someone really pull off the perfect crime of the century? And then the next day, the first pages of newspapers screamed in bold letters, "They stole diamonds worth $100 million and left nothing but silence." Antwerp, the city that once symbolized luxury and trust, had now become a city of questions. That morning, the Antwerp police were stepping into the strangest case of their careers. The vault investigation continued. Forensic experts, fingerprint teams, and light scanners examined every inch carefully. But nothing was normal there. No broken locks, no damaged gates, no triggered alarm. Everything was exactly in place, except for the diamonds, which had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away from the bank, in the dense woods outside Antwerp, a municipal worker found something strange. A half-burnt envelope, and beside it, a half-eaten sandwich. Maybe someone had thrown it away in a hurry, but no one knew this would become the first thread in the entire investigation. When that sandwich was examined in the forensic lab, the DNA matched a name already in Antwerp police records: Leonardo Nader Bartolo. The moment the name was read, every police officer exchanged looks, because Leonardo was no ordinary man. He had been involved in several small jewelry scams before. A man whose charm, cunning, and planning skills had already become legend. The next day, police raided an apartment outside Antwerp, Leonardo's apartment. As the door opened, officers found dozens of fake IDs, several photographs of the Diamond District, some handwritten notes, and a detailed vault diagram. But the strangest thing, the apartment was spotless. No cash, no diamonds, no direct proof. Just a few breadcrumbs that testified this was no small job. Leonardo was immediately arrested. His photos splashed across newspapers, the Italian mastermind behind the Antwerp diamond heist. But the real suspense was only beginning. In the interrogation room, under a pale blue light, Leonardo sat, calm, composed, almost amused. An officer asked, "How did you get the vault code?" Leonardo smiled and replied, "I'm just a simple businessman who took some photos for insurance." Every answer came in that same cold, emotionless tone. Sometimes he looked straight into the officer's eyes, and it felt as though the truth was sitting right there. But the police still couldn't see it. As the investigation continued, the picture grew clearer. Leonardo wasn't alone. He was part of a highly professional team: an electronics expert, an alarm bypass technician, a safe cracker, a driver. Each one a master in his field. The entire heist had been planned over 18 months. Every move calculated, every detail rehearsed, every error eliminated. But the big question remained: where was the rest of the gang? Where were the diamonds? And why had no trace been left inside the vault? Police expanded their search from Belgium to Italy. Interpol was alerted. Raids took place across multiple European countries, but nothing was found. The gang that entered that vault that night had vanished like smoke. Months passed. Leonardo stayed in prison but never spoke. Reporters often asked, "Can you tell us where the diamonds are?" He would just smile and say, "If I tell you, the magic will end." The story ended there. The vault was empty, the gang disappeared, and the world's safest city was left with a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Diamonds worth $100 million, once the pride of Antwerp, had now become myth. Sometimes the biggest theft isn't of money, but of trust. And that night, Antwerp lost its trust. Leonardo Nader Bartolo, the name that once filled every headline in Antwerp. The same Leonardo who had opened the world's most secure vault, as if it were a game. After the 2003 heist, the court sentenced him to 10 years in prison, but he never served the full term. He was released early for good behavior. Even today, when he walks down a street, people still search his face for the mystery that Antwerp never solved. Years have passed, but those diamonds worth $100 million were never found. Police, Interpol, private investigators, everyone searched, traced every country, but it was as if the earth itself had swallowed them. Leonardo always laughed and said, "If I tell everything, the story will end." And maybe that was true because it was the mystery that kept the story alive. Antwerp, the city that once stood as a symbol of luxury and trust, still trembles at the memory of that night. The bank multiplied its security,
New biometric locks, heat sensors, AI surveillance, everything was installed. But one thing, once broken, never truly returned: trust. Because now, every guard, every customer, every trader carries the same fear. What if the vault opens again? After Leonardo's release, a journalist asked, "Do you feel any regret?" He smiled faintly and said, "No regret, only that the world understood the plan but not the reason." That reason, the obsession to outsmart a system, the dream to create the perfect crime. Maybe for him this wasn't about money. It was rebellion, against a world that runs only on power and privilege. Antwerp's night still feels the same, a slight chill in the air. Yellow streetlights shining over empty streets. A distant church bell, echoing softly. But now, a shadow lingers in that light. The shadow of the heist that taught the world that even in the deepest silence, storms can hide. The week of 2003 now lives only in old newspaper pages. But every time a diamond trader locks his vault, his fingers hesitate for just a second. Because somewhere inside that same fear, that same memory still lives. People say it was the perfect heist. No bullets fired, no alarm sounded, no guards hurt, no noise heard. And yet, in one night, $100 million vanished into thin air. Time passed. But the story did not fade. Because this wasn't just a theft, it was an art, an illusion, a game beyond human understanding. Leonardo Notarbartolo and his team may have disappeared somewhere in the world. Or maybe they live under new names, in some new city. But their names have already become legend. The Antwerp, they may be gone, but their name still stands as the world's most perfect robbery.